in between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along back to the VRRC. We've had a week off, but we're back now to bring you lots of virtual racing entertainment on your Wednesday evenings with a brand new championship, another 6-week competition full of plenty of thrills and spills along the way. I'm sure I'm delighted to be back here, Andy McEwen with Jack Oliphant alongside me, as always, for what I'm sure is going to be a really exciting championship. If you are a fan of motorsport in the UK, then you probably will have, indeed you should have, at some point experienced the Civic Cup, which is a really exciting one-make championship which has produced some pretty talented drivers actually over the years, always produces close racing, and now it enters into the virtual world with the Maximum Networks Civic Cup taking place here on the VRRC. The opening rounds tonight on the magnificent Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. As I said, Andy McEwen here in the commentary box, Jack Oliphant alongside me, and Jack is also a member of the Civic Cup family now. I've been commentating on the championship for a few years, but Jack was the super sub at Cadwell Park over the bank holiday weekend. Jack, I believe you very much enjoyed your first taste of Civic Cup action.
Yeah, absolutely loved it, and it's appropriate really that we have the opening round on the sim world on the same week that we had the opening round in the real world as well. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's just a shame that the opening round in the virtual world isn't at Cadwell Park. We're not actually visiting it, but that's probably due to the fact that this is a 6-round championship and we can only have so many tracks, obviously. Like you mentioned though, Andy, a fantastic opening venue for any race series is the Brands Hatch GP. And a lot of drivers' favourite circuits as well are on the calendar. Thruxton, Alton Park Island, of course, which is the more sort of commonly used touring car style approach to Alton Park. Silverstone National, then we have Croft, probably my least favourite circuit to drive in the world, but it's apparently very favourable in the sim, and it does always provide pretty exciting racing as well for coverage. And then Donington National, which is my favourite track in the world, so I don't get miserable for too long. Success Ballast added to the cars, obviously live broadcast of me and Andy and Tom on the cameras as per usual. Everything really set up for it to be a brilliant championship.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll get into a lot of the things you mentioned there as we get into the evening. Certainly, things like the Success Ballast and the point system and whatnot. This, though, is ultimately what they are all fighting for, as ever here on the VRRC. We don't do these things just for fun. There are prizes up for grabs, pretty tasty ones as well. First prize, the champion come the end of the 6-week season will win an AGON 34-inch curved gaming display. Second place receives the Riggs SimRace 3, the sim rig there, which I know was a very popular prize with our recipient of that one in the Cayman Cup a couple of weeks ago. Third prize, third place at the end of the season, will receive 2 tickets to a round of the TCR UK Championship for 2022, which is often supported by the Real World Civic Cup. So there's extra interest there for these Civic Cup drivers to come along and see the racing for real at a real world venue. Fourth place in the championship receives 2 hours of online driver coaching, and fifth place is the PowerMax Valeting bucket, and also the PowerMax prize is associated with the driver of the round as well, because the Valeting kit will go to the driver that myself and Jack vote as being the most impressive all-round performance over any given night. So 6 weeks, 6 Valeting kits up for grabs. That's what they are fighting for then here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, which actually will be, I believe, the next round of the Civic Cup. That will be part of one of the TCR UK rounds as well. So for a couple of the real world drivers we've got racing with us here, chat, this is some useful practice.
Yeah, and actually one of the real world drivers is currently top of the, I think it's qualifying we're into now. As soon as we go back to live pictures, it might still be practice actually. It's Max Edmondson, of course, who didn't have a brilliant weekend actually on Monday, I should say. It's not really the weekend, but the bank holiday. But he'll be sure to probably put that things right this time out in the virtual world. And yeah, like we said, very popular prizes all around the field. I mean, that's SimRace 5 chassis, SimRace 3 chassis, sorry, is an extremely popular prize because they're not cheap. As you said, we don't do things by half here at the Civic Cup or VRRC. But I tell you what we can do is we can have a look at the hot lap of Brands Hatch in the Civic Cup.
So here we are, going to go across the line at Brands Hatch for round 1 of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup, powered by VRRC. Early on the brakes and trying to get early application on throttle as well, just to balance that car and not clipping that inside curb. It does have a tendency to bounce with these dampers not being particularly good. Down to second gear, focusing on just a gentle application on throttle there, trying not to get it to push that front end on too much. Now down to third for Graham Hill Bend, yet again not clipping that inside curb, but you can see super smooth on exit and carrying as much speed there as we possibly can. Now towards turn 4 for me, one of the most difficult bends. I just missed my apex ever so slightly, but still carry good speed round the corner. This for me is probably one of the best places for an overtake, focusing on your exit there, getting in the slipstream of the car in front, and then having a look down into Hawthorne Bend, turn 5. Really difficult, a bit the same as turn 1. Early application on the brake and get off it to balance the car, then you can get on the throttle. And then turn 6, taking as much of this apex as we dare, looking for that exit and getting them right wheels on the curve, focusing on using all the track through that section. Turn 7 Sheen curve, I missed this ever so slightly, just carrying a little bit too much speed in, and you can see that means I can't quite get on the throttle soon enough. Turn 8 down to third, be patient on throttle, otherwise the car has a tendency to push wide onto the grass and it'll really sacrifice your lap time going down towards the last corner. Now turn 9, yet again really difficult corner, being careful not to push it on, and that is a lap of Brands Hatch. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday night at 7:30 on VRRC's YouTube, and make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
Well, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit is an iconic one for a reason, and a real driver's favourite for a reason. You can see just how committed you have to be, especially out on that Grand Prix loop down through Hawthorns, through Westfield, Sheen Curve, Stirlings. You've got to carry the momentum, especially in these relatively low-powered front-wheel drive tin-top cars. They do not pick up speed all that quickly off the corners. You've got to carry the speed through those quick corners out on the back of the circuit, and that means you need to be fully committed to getting those corners right, and that can be tricky, especially on cold tyres, and that's what the drivers right now are contending with, because they're on their opening laps in this 15-minute qualifying session that will set the grid for round number 1 of the championship. As ever, 2 races coming your way tonight, and the second of those will feature the usual reversed grids, so that one always bound to produce lots. On board here with Max Edmondson then, as Jack said, one of the real-world Civic Cup drivers. He knows the car pretty well then, and at the moment he is heading down towards Hawthorn Corner on a flying lap. Jack, I believe you have driven the Grand Prix circuit, haven't you, here at Brands Hatch? Something I've only been able to do in the sim, unfortunately. Is it as big a thrill ride as it would appear to be from riding on board here?
Yeah, I'm one of those rare drivers that I've actually only driven the Indy circuit once, and I've driven the GP circuit about 4 or 5 times. Yeah. So I'm one of the lucky breed, I think, out there, because everybody says, although the Indy's quite fun, the GP's really the sort of dream circuit you want to do, and I can completely understand why. I think I take it for granted, because Brands Hatch isn't my favourite circuit, mainly because I haven't really ever had very good results around here. But I will tell you, if you do get an opportunity to go on a test day, or they mainly exclusively keep it as test days, don't they? They don't tend to do track days around there, but it is absolutely belting. It's fantastic fun, and when you go out to the back section, it is all about commitment. Shift down a gear, throw the car in, hope it sticks, because if it doesn't, you're likely going to touch a bit of grass and you're likely going to end up in a barrier. So it really does separate the best drivers, and the bravest drivers don't always get the most amount of time, because you can be brave and bad, unfortunately, in motorsport, can't you? And if you take a little bit too much speed in, you end up with either a wrecked car or a lot of gravel. Either way, it's going to slow you down, sort of thing. So these drivers are going to have to know their car inside and out and know every inch of this track if they're going to maximise the speed. But we've seen that these drivers as well in the Cayman Cup and touring cars. We've been to Brands Hatch a lot at VRRC. These drivers should know it like the back of their hands. It's just a case of getting to grips with the car as Reece Bell goes off the circuit. I did have a look, actually. Reece Bell stuck some notes in the broadcaster chat that they give us some notes to sort of give a bit of a background about the drivers. He came pretty much dead last in the Cayman Cup, and he wasn't embarrassed to admit that. And he also wasn't embarrassed to admit that he's actually got some help off the HFT boys, who obviously dominated the likes of Carl Felvis and the rest of them, to try and speed himself up a little bit, get some race confidence going into these qualifying sessions in this series. So he's hoping to be a couple of places higher maybe than off the back of the grid.
Yeah, well, looking forward to seeing how he does. At the moment, he is a few places higher than the back of the grid. 13th fastest in this qualifying session. Edmondson fastest from Jordan Brennan and Max Bird. Not at all surprising that 3 of our real-world drivers, 2 of whom have real-world Civic Cup experience, Edmondson and Brennan, are at the top of the field. Max Bird, of course, with experience in Mini Challenge, also very similar front-wheel drive tin tops. Those of you who are perhaps not familiar with the Real World Civic Cup might be wondering why this is the older Mark II or P3 Honda Civic that you're seeing. Well, that is the car that's used still in the Civic Cup. If it ain't broke, don't fix it and all that. These cars are still really popular. You can get hold of a donor car pretty cheaply, and part still readily available. That's the key, really. So keeping these cars going in the real world is still very much achievable, and that's why the championship continues to be extremely popular. And these cars, I think, actually are a lot more fun than some of the other shape, the EP4, for example, Civic, which there are a couple of them racing in the Real World Championship. I think these cars are just more fun, certainly based on what a lot of the drivers that I've spoken to have told me. So an old car it may be, but as you know, Jack, from your experience at Cadwell Park, that doesn't mean they treat them like old cars. They throw them around, and of course in the sim, they really don't have to worry about mechanical sympathy, do they? I think we're going to see some hard racing from these cars.
Yeah, and bumping and bruising, it did look like proper touring car racing out there at times at Cadwell, but that sometimes is the only way round to get round people on that circuit, isn't it? A couple of drivers did have the FN2 at the weekend. I know one of those drivers was Dave Marshall, who is taking to the real world in the production class of the Civic Cups, and I think he got 3 seconds in the end, which he was a bit disappointed on because he qualified on pole. But he has one of the new FN2 shapes, and he says that the EP3s just have that little extra oomph in a straight line still, even if the FN2 has a little bit more of a turn-in sort of, shorter wheelbase or something. I'm not sure why it was, but it just seems to have that characteristic. So the majority of the grid are therefore still using the EP3s, and like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of these drivers will know the car like the back of the hand. The likes of Edmondson, Brennan, who's probably hoping that his gearbox won't explode like it did in real life on Monday, is also straight up there. And to be honest, he's absolutely rapid in the sim. You could chuck him in any form of Civic. It could be 50 years old. He'd probably still be in the top 3.
I wonder how valuable a 50-year-old Honda Civic would be. Fairly valuable, I'd imagine, because I don't think they'd been designed by that point.
You know what I mean.
I do. I have to say, Joel Lask, I'm noticing, up there, 3rd fastest. Not at all surprised to see Joel going well here. He wasn't necessarily a front runner in the Cayman Cup, which was our most recent championship here on the VRRC Wednesday nights. But this is a front-wheel drive car, very similar to the touring car trophy machinery, with which he had quite a bit of success in the previous championship to the Cayman. So Joel Lask starting to show that maybe front-wheel drive is very much his forte. He's got Max Bird here in 4th position, less than a 10th of a second behind him though. And Max Bird, who Jack has had some pretty exciting news actually in recent times, has Max, and working now alongside Porsche, isn't he, as a Porsche development driver, I believe. So Max Bird really on the up in the real world, and we know that he's a force to be reckoned with here on the sim.
Yeah, I've seen his announcement being banded around social media and everything like that. And to be honest, I logged on tonight and I saw Max Bird, and you mentioned Mini Challenge, and I was thinking that's not the reason why I know the name. I couldn't connect the dots. But you're absolutely right. Of course, he got that announcement with Porsche. Well, he announced it today. Obviously, the deal was probably done a little while ago. But no rest for the wicked. He's on to the sim and decided, you know what, I want to try my hand at these front-wheel drive cars still a little bit and get myself hands on some prizes as well. So brilliant to see Max Bird, and again, it's just showing that VRRC is the place to be for all sort of competitive sim races and real life races, for their competition to be as hotly contested as it is, because we do have very good driving standards here at VRRC. We pride ourselves on the new ballast system, which we haven't explained too much, but we'll go through in a minute, because everybody's probably wondering why there's various colours and numbers on the side of their names on the timing tower. But basically everything that gets put into VRRC is to try and give the most realistic competitive edge compared to all of the sim racing leagues out there, and I think they do a fantastic job with it.
Speaking of doing a fantastic job, Scott Bugner goes second fastest, Max Bird up into 3rd. So we're getting some quite late improvements actually here. We're coming towards the final 3rd of the session, and we're starting to see more drivers getting towards the sharp end of the field. And the other thing, Jack, that really excites me here is that we've got not only a big grid here, we've got some 24 cars entered into this season opening round, but the top 15 of those right now covered by less than a second, and it's a decent length circuit, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix layout, and yet the times all exceptionally close. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And as you said, that handicap system, the handicap weight system, has a lot to do with that. I think if you're new here on the VRRC and you're wondering what those brightly coloured numbers are next to the drivers' names on the timing tower, they are all relating to the relatively new for last season in the Cayman Cup handicap system. So the higher the number, the more weight, the more ballast is added to that driver's car. So a blue number 3, for example, for the likes of Max Bird, Eric Axelson, Carl Felvers, means they're carrying 30 kilos of handicap weight. A red number 5, well, that's as high as it can go. Jordan Brennan carrying the full 50 kilos of ballast, whereas those sort of orangey, bronzy coloured zeros, well, those drivers are carrying no ballast at all. And Max Edmondson enjoying that very much with a whopping lap time that he's just put in to go quite comfortably now to the top. He was already fastest in the qualifying session, but even further up the road now. Will Redford goes 3rd, and that's another big improvement as we head into the final part of the session. But that handicap system definitely playing its part here. We're seeing some of the lighter cars at the front of the field, and the reason that some cars are lighter than others, well, it's based on that driver's success and experience on the VRRC. So the likes of Jordan Brennan, who have won multiple races, multiple championships on the VRRC servers, has to carry a bit more weight than those with perhaps a bit less experience. And from what we're seeing so far, Jack, it's doing its job.
Yeah, exactly. And the way it works, as you mentioned, it's all about your VRRC experience, not necessarily your real world or other sim experience, unless you are a massive exception, of course. So the drivers that are currently on zero ballast, the likes of Edmondson and Redford, if they start winning, they'll very quickly find themselves on probably 20, 30, maybe even 40 kilos by the end of this championship. It is adaptive. Every single round, they refresh the sort of ratings. They see where you're at. They see your consistency and fastest laps and everything like that. And they will add ballast between rounds if you deserve it, put it that way. Which is why Scott Bugner, I think, was on 10 kilos at the end of the last championship, is now on 20. And you'll probably see the likes of Redford and Edmondson at least on 20 in the next 2 weeks, I would say. Brilliant drive from Edmondson to get that lap. And we mentioned a full second separating the top 15. Because of that lap that Edmondson put in, the second has now gone down to the top 9. So he's absolutely flying out there. Half a lap quicker than Scott Bugner, who you mentioned is doing a brilliant job as well. Mick Sutton is the only driver in the top 10 at the moment who is improving on his lap time as we go into the last 2.5 minutes. Jordan Brennan actually just improved his sector 2. But not quick enough to improve himself, I don't believe. So we'll have to keep an eye out on him. But I do like the fact that there are so many variations of ballast out there in the top 10. It just goes to show how well it's working, especially the likes of Jordan Brennan. He's flying normally in these sort of qualifiers. He's fantastic at qualifying on pole position and one-lap flyers. But at the moment, in 5th, because he's just getting handicapped a little bit, and that's exactly what we want to see.
Yeah, I mean, inside the top 6 on the grid, we've got one representative from each of the handicap sort of bands, haven't we, that we've got. There are no drivers carrying 40 kilos, but every other handicap weight represented on those top 3 rows, so it's clearly doing its job. Reece Bell here, we're following down in 20th place at the moment. We're not going to lose sight of that car unless we have a surprise round at a safari park or something later on in the season. That is a very distinctive livery on the number 9 car, which turns into clearways, comes out through Clark Curve, and looks to try and get the slipstream from the car ahead. The slipstream will play a part on some circuits, some of the slightly more open flowing circuits, perhaps like Thruxton, Donington Park, in these slightly boxy, unaerodynamic Honda Civic EP3s. Reece Bell not able to use that slipstream on that occasion to improve, but he will have time for one more lap, and he now has to hope that he doesn't catch this other driver in an inopportune place. It looked like maybe he was a bit tentative on the brakes into Druid's Corner, just in case that car ahead braked a bit early. Still got most cars out on track, actually. Only 2 of them are in the pit lane at the moment. Paul Laramie, sorry, no, not Paul Laramie. Number 31, Redford, Mark Redford, is in the pit lane. And in fact, Chris Shepherd there just jumping up ahead of him into 16th place as a result. The other driver in the pit lane is the 639 of Jones. But a busy track right now as drivers try and improve into the final few seconds of the session.
It is always a bit difficult, isn't it? Especially around a track like Brands Hatch, to get that little bit of space to put your flying lap in. As Reece Bell was finding there, you can be in a decent space, you can get into a good rhythm, cars at a good temperature. But if the driver ahead of you, if you're not quite sure about what they're going to do, whether they're going to be a bit tentative, then it can be dangerous to try and push as hard as you can. Scott Bugner's been pushing as hard as he can. Now he crosses the line to take the checkered flag with an improvement as well. It was only an improvement by 1/10 of a second, which wasn't good enough to put him on the top step of the grid, but he's still on the front row as it stands at the moment. Will Redford hasn't posted any quicker sector times. Max Bird couldn't post a better sector either. A better lap. Jordan Brennan doesn't look like he's going any quicker. In fact, nobody in the top 12 really looks like they're going quicker. So at the moment, Scott Bugner, I'm sure, will be very pleased to be on the front row of the grid. Max Edmondson will be alongside him, obviously taking that pole position point, or I believe actually it might be 2 points actually. I think we've been saying it's a point for the past couple of weeks, but I believe they get 2 for qualifying on pole.
Yes, I will get that double check, but I think you're right. That does ring a bell. So even more worthwhile going for the pole positions. Max Edmondson should have this wrapped up by now, hence why he's decided to bail for the pit lane. So in he comes. Looks like those 2 points, and we have just had it confirmed. It is 2 points for pole position, are going his way, but what sort of positional changes will we see down the order, if any? Andy Carroll there pushing on. Eric Axelson comes out of Clark Curve. He is 7th right now. in the number 75 car. He's about to come across the timing beam, though. Can he improve? Doesn't need to find a lot to improve on 7th. In the end, can't quite find anything, though, so he stays where he was. Still got a few drivers out on laps, though. Sutton heads for the pit lane. I think we did just see a slight improvement there. That might have been the 10th place driver, Dorman, who managed to jump up a position. But generally speaking, I think we've got the front of the field pretty much set now. Edmondson looks good for pole position. Scott Bugner second, Will Redford third. All three of them have seen the checkered flag, with Max Bird heading for the pit lane in fourth and Jordan Brennan having also completed the session. So an interesting look to the front of the grid there, Jack.
It absolutely is. Yeah, I can't wait to see how the likes of Edmondson, apparently Will Redford only signed up to VRRC yesterday, fresh off the back of his Cadwell Park experience, I'm sure. So I'm excited to see how he gets on. But we're going to take a very, very quick break, and hopefully we'll have a chat to our pole sitter after this.
Welcome back to the VRRC and the Maximum Networks Civic Cup, which gets its season underway here tonight on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Qualifying has just been completed. We have our first pole sitter of the season. We have our championship leader indeed, because 2 championship points go to the fastest driver in qualifying. And in this opening qualifying session of the season, it was Max Edmondson who set the fastest time. Max, congratulations on not just clinching pole position, but demolishing the opposition. That was one heck of a lap.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, to be fair. I did have a target for myself, which was 1 minute 40 of some sort, which I just managed to do, but I was on for a 7 and then messed it up, so I'm not too happy with myself, but obviously pole by 4/10 isn't too bad.
You know what, I hear that so often from drivers that absolutely crush the opposition and then turn around and say, oh, I could have gone even quicker, you know. The rest of the field will probably be not too happy to hear that. Of course, being quick in qualifying, though, doesn't guarantee an easy race victory, does it? Especially in a field this competitive.
Yeah, and obviously the tyres in this car and around this track are not the best, so you will see a lot of cars being slow towards the end, because obviously the left-hand side of the car does seem to struggle, especially with weight, which I'm fortunate not to have any.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because those high-speed corners around the back, they do wear out that left front tyre. So will you be pacing yourself? Can you afford to pace yourself in the early stages, or do you just, you know, push hard, try and build a gap, and then manage the tyres as and when you need to?
I haven't done much race running, but I know after about literally 2 or 3 laps, the front left does start to just destroy itself, so I generally don't know what to do. Probably go for fastest lap at the start and then just pace myself, to be fair.
Let's speak of the start then, because getting these things off the line, I'd imagine, can be a bit of a challenge, and the last thing you want to do is undo the hard work from qualifying, so a practice start's something you've been able to do a few of.
Yeah, there's you can just kick it into gear, you can slowly release the clutch, you can drop the clutch. There's a few different ways, and I think they're all about even. It's just obviously your reaction time will be what kills you or doesn't.
Awesome stuff. Well, Max, congratulations on the first pole position of the season. Best of luck for race 1, and let's hope we're chatting to you again in 20 minutes or so on the podium.
Yeah, thank you.
Max Edmondson then gets the pole position in race number 1 of the season, and the build-up to race 1 now begins, and what a fascinating championship it's going to be this. There are the field of drivers lining up on the grid. We're a minute or so away from the start of this first race of the season. I don't know about you, Jack, but I'm ready for this. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a big grid, isn't it? It's full of talent, and I think we mentioned the top 10 separated by less than a second, which is usual on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. In fact, it's probably expected on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, but on the GP, that's pretty unheard of. It's a long circuit, it's tricky, it's committed. You need the car in the right place, like Max Edmondson said. So there is a lot of very, very quick times. Race pace will be completely different. I was interested to hear Max saying about the tyre on the front left. We expect that to go away from the drivers, but it sounds like it's going to go away very quickly. So it might be a case of fastest lap is put in within the first 3 laps, and then it's just a case of drivers trying to manage their way through the race and seeing what opportunities they can find, later down the line when people start making mistakes. But a lot to think about, Andy. I can't wait for it.
Either. Here we go then. Max Edmondson has the pole position. Scott Bugner alongside him. That is your front row of the grid. Bugner, of course, carrying a bit of ballast in that handicap system that we spoke about earlier on, based upon driver data collected by the VRRC from this year. So those that have had a bit more success, that have shown a bit more speed, they carry a bit more ballast, and might that have an effect in the race? Let's find out then. The lights go out, we're away in racing, and Edmondson gets a good start from pole position. Slotting into second is Bugner. He immediately, though, peeks to the outside line to try and challenge for the race lead. It won't work, though. Will Redford is there in third position. They go single file out of Paddock Hill Bend, and amazingly, they all come out the other side pretty much in one piece, I reckon. Bugner again challenges to the outside at Druids. There is no way through, though. Edmondson is not going to open that door if he can help it. They drop down the hill into Graham Hill Bend, and so far, so good for the pole sitter.
Yeah, Will Redford actually looked very interested in trying to go around the outside of Scott Bugner, which was never going to happen through Graham Hill Bend, but just trying to put him offline and ruin his run maybe towards Surtees. A little bit of contact in the background there. Mick Sutton was the receiving driver. I'm not sure who was the culprit. So it might have been Andy Dorman, who's now getting overtaken by Josh Martin, a name who is synonymous with sim racing these days. Works very hard at SimGrid, as well as a whole host of other businesses involved in the sim world. Here comes Will Redford, and it's going to be a very, very committed and brave move here, Andy, as they go down towards the GP circuit, and I think Max Bird looks interested in trying to take advantage.
Yeah, this is what we see so often on the GP circuit at Brands Hatch. As soon as one driver starts to defend, it costs you so much momentum and allows the rest of the field behind to stack up on your rear bumper. We're seeing the same sort of thing here in the midfield. Chris Shepherd there on the inside of Elliot. Dalton Ayres gets sideways, and we've got our first casualty, I'm afraid. Off into the barriers goes Brad Smith, and how on earth did they all miss him as he spanked off one barrier back across the road into another, and that could have been an awful lot worse. So Smith drops down towards the tail end of the field. They're still getting sideways. This is the fight for second place. Look at this. You can throw a pocket handkerchief across the lot of them. Across the line goes Max Edmondson. He is almost 2 seconds clear of this. Second place is Bugner. 3 wide for third. On the inside line is Max Bird. He's sideways over the curb. He's into the side of Redford, who also gets sideways. And Jordan Brennan, you can almost bet your house on the fact that he will find the right place to be at the right time, and he picks up the pieces to go third.
I don't know how they haven't just absolutely flown into the old paddock there at Brands Hatch. That's absolutely sensational driving. It's like they were watching the drifts on Monday instead of focusing on their own racing. Eric Axelson trying to take care of the business on Will Redford, who's been absolutely mugged here. As Carl Belvis, obviously a protagonist in the championship in the Cayman Cup, who's that sending it right up the inside, I think a little bit ambitiously, and I think it was Mick Sutton going very close to the inside, trying to make it 4 wide through Surtees. Probably a little bit ambitious, probably some might say a little bit foolish, but he's ended up every car pointing in the right direction. And in fact, he's made up a place or two, so that was absolutely brilliant. But Will Redford just dropping like a stone thanks to one move at Paddock Hill Bend. Astonishing stuff.
Ooh, someone's off. That might be Andy Carroll. Yeah, I think it is Andy Carroll that bounced off the barriers at Hawthorne. Rejoins, though, the car seemingly relatively undamaged. Yeah, you've got a feel for Will Redford because he looked quicker than Bugner, didn't he? That's sort of what triggered all of that. He was attacking Bugner for second, and it just didn't quite work. He ended up getting tagged by Max Bird at Paddock, and although they all did well to save the cars, as you said, it did lose in momentum. And once you lose momentum in this category, you are going to drop like a rock through the order. Right, down towards clearways for the end of lap 2. Edmondson is gone. Scott Bugner now starting to breathe a bit more in second place as well. So Jordan Brennan in third. That's where the first battle is. Here is another one, though. This is Mark Redford going up the inside line here then. Oh, no, sorry, that'll be Buki up the inside of him, won't it? So Mark Redford on the outside. Dave Buki, race winner, former champion in real world Civic Cup racing, tries to get up the inside of 2 cars at once. And, well, it works. I don't think he had any right to pull that off because he had it all crossed up himself. But as one car goes off, he ends up you got 2 places there, does Dave Buki, who, as we know, it's the Dave Buki way. He's getting stuck in, and so far, it's all sticking for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say it, but there looked like there may have been a slight bit of contact there, but we didn't quite see with our camera, so we'll let the stewards decide that, and we'll just say well done to Dave Buki for getting through 2 drivers in 1 corner. Chris Shepherd. Now, this is uncharacteristically low down for him, Andy, isn't it? I mean, sometimes we see a fantastic drive by Chris Shepherd where he can't be beaten, in essence, and he's absolutely demolishing the rest of the field. And then sometimes he's just sort of labouring outside the top 10 or around the top 10 battles, which, as I said, is a little bit unlike him, I have to say. Carl Felvers, though, a driver who's right at the front of the field for the Cayman Cup, maybe hasn't quite had enough practice for this one. Maybe isn't actually that accustomed to front-wheel drive. But he's at the moment fighting for top 5, which is still good. As Jordan Brennan goes very wide, this is for 4th place. He gets back on the circuit as Joel Lask gets past him. I don't think there was any contact there through, I think that sheen curve, but it ended up drivers still in the race. It's still in the race, which is what we want to see. This is, you don't know where to look, Andy. They're still making moves through Clark Curve.
Oh, contact. That's Redford into Felvers. Felvers gets sideways. He's in the gravel trap coming through Clark Curve, and he's going to rejoin. Oh, dear. Right in front of Elliot Dalton and Chris Shepherd. That almost went horrifically wrong, and Carl Felvers suddenly finds himself out of the top 10. I mean, this really goes to prove your point here, Jack, as just how competitive this field is. You have a moment like that from inside the top half dozen or so, and you're going to plummet down the order. Maybe 5, 6, maybe more places could be lost just through one misstep. Now, that wasn't necessarily Felvers' fault, but either way, he falls down from 6th position all the way down to 13th place. Now, Mick Sutton moves up to challenge Will Redford for 6th position. This is all starting to get very busy indeed. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th places together. Redford, Sutton, Martin, Axelson and Dorman. And that's a big dive up the inside for Mick Sutton. It looked like it was going to work. But then again, that momentum, Jack, you can't go in on that tighter line and expect to carry the momentum off the corner. And now it's actually Sutton under pressure heading down Pilgrim's Drop.
Yeah, he tried it earlier on, didn't he, as he went up the inside of Surtees, but that only worked because they were already 3 wide and already slowing each other up. If you're going 1 versus 1, it's not always necessarily going to work as they go through Hawthorns 2 wide, which doesn't normally work either, but Eric Dalton-Ayres, and I believe that's Chris Shepherd just ahead of him, did make it work. Mick Sutton has gotten ahead of Will Redford, who's obviously in brackets trying to recover somewhat and going through 2 wide through there is no limit of where these drivers won't go 2 wide at this point here at Brands Hatch. This is very, very dicey maneuvers from some of them, but as I said, luckily most of them are facing in the right direction. I know we have Rich Hayden here trying to keep an eye on driving standards. At the moment, it's a bit touch and go, I would say, but it's making very entertaining viewing for us all. Andy Dorman on Josh Martin. Andy, very experienced with the VRRC, trying to hold off Josh at the moment.
Yes, as they make their way down the start-finish straight. Looks like he'll succeed in doing that for now. Now, HFT teammates at play here. Carl Felvers getting back ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres after Felvers is off at Clearways a lap ago. So he's only picked up 1 more position since then. More door banging now at Druid's Corner. That's Jordan Brennan on the outside line. Max Bird was in 3rd position. Of course, Brennan was 3rd before all of that. And now it's Joel Lask into P3. So all 3 of these drivers in shot have had a stint in 3rd place at one point or another. It's Lask that has it now. Here comes Bird back up the inside of Jordan Brennan. It's overtaking wherever you look, and unfortunately we can't look at all of it. There's simply too much action going on. But it's not just overtaking, Jack, it's passing and then repassing, and that's really nice to see. Sometimes when a driver gets overtaken, they don't then have the pace or the potential to fight back. That is absolutely not the case. You can see here Bird was ahead of Brennan, and at the very next corner Brennan back up the inside trying to reclaim 4th place.
I'll tell you what it is. A little bit of contact. I thought I was going to have to get very excited then. It's a little bit uncharacteristic from a race 1, isn't it? Normally we see qualifying and basically everybody goes around in a bit of procession and that's done and dusted because it's settled based on pace in qualifying. And then race 2 is when we normally see all this action with the reverse grid, obviously. But right now they're giving us a right treat, aren't they? Mick Sutton, to be honest, I can't remember where he started on the grid. I would love to know because I swear he's probably one of the drivers that's gained the most amount since the start of this race. and he's just been doing it by dive bombing everyone by the looks of it. Max Bird getting very wide through Clark Curb. That is the definition of using all the track and then some, just to keep his car on the circuit and keep it pointed in a straight line. And as they go down towards Paddock Hill, you can see Mick Sutton maybe going a slightly offline, trying to fill the mirrors of Jordan Brennan, who is very, very experienced, very quick, very used to running at the front. He won't be phased at all as he looks up the inside of Max Bird. But again, these two real-life racers going hammer and tongs on it on the sim world. This is fantastic stuff.
This is some of the best racing I've ever seen on the VRRC, and I've seen some pretty good racing on the VRRC over the last few months. This is absolutely fantastic. Mick Sutton, to answer your question, started 9th, so I think he actually lost some places at the start, and now has fought his way back up. Oh, sideways for Max Bird now. Brennan's out wide as well, and Mick Sutton's progress towards the front is going to continue here because he's banging into the side of Jordan Brennan's Honda Civic as they go over the hill, down Pilgrim's Drop. That's the outside line. They're being caught here by Will Redford as well, so this is soon to be a 4-way fight for 4th position. It's Max Bird in 4th, Jordan Brennan in 5th, Mick Sutton in 6th, Will Redford right there with them now in 7th place. They're allowing Joel Last to escape slightly up the road, but what terrific racing this is, and we're not even halfway yet.
Oh, crikey, I don't think my voice can take another over 10 minutes of this, but I'm all here for it. I'm looking forward to it. Jordan Brennan, we know how wily he is. He's trying to throw everything at Max Bird, isn't he? And Bird just isn't shifting whatsoever. I wouldn't say he's the cork in the bottle either, because like you said, Andy, as soon as one driver overtakes, the other one can come straight back at them, which is what we love to see. Really close competitive racing here in any series, but particularly, obviously, the Civic Cup really does make a show of it, shall we say. And they do get that little advantage of a little bit of slipstream here at Brands Hatch. Not enough to sort of cause really easy overtakes, but just enough to give them a little bit of a whiff at an opportunity. As Max Bird goes defensive into Paddock Hill Bend, Jordan Brennan trying to get that normal racing line, but misses the apex by just a touch. Mick Sutton having to go defensive on a recovering Will Redford, who goes around the outside at Druids here. Can he get the momentum in the front wheel drive? You can get really early on the power to be on the inside for Graham Hill Bend. There's door banging, forcing off the circuit there was Mick Sutton on Will Redford as he tries to get the cut back through Graham Hill.
No.
There's contact. That's exactly what we didn't want to see. Will Redford slams the brakes on. That's exactly what he should do so he doesn't career into anybody. But that was on the precipice of being fantastic action, but just a bit too much contact.
Yes, we'll let the stewards make the final call on that, but I don't think there's much more Will Redford could have done there. He was clearly alongside to the outside of Druids, got put on the grass, and then he'd made the move coming out of Graham Hill Bend. He was hit sideways and then hit 2 or 3 more times whilst he was already trying to gather that one together. So I don't think Will Redford is going to be terribly happy with the way that all transpired. Right, you'd think the fight for 21st and 22nd or 22nd and 23rd place would be a bit more sedate, wouldn't you? But anything but. Brad Smith here recovering back through the order. You can see the damage to the front of his Honda Civic, but the damage to the rear as well after his off into the barriers. Earlier in the race coming out of Sheen Curve, wasn't it? He's still fighting on though. He's on the outside line and he's all over the grass. In fact, that is Paul Laramie that he's it's Brunning that he's fighting with, and these two have traded places at least 2 or 3 times on this lap alone. So wherever you look in the order, there are fights to be had, and that's really important actually, Jack, because it's very easy for us as commentators to get very wrapped up in the fighting at the front of the field. Down towards the tail of the order, we've got some slightly less experienced drivers, many of them perhaps making their first appearance here on the VRRC, and they still have someone to race with. You're not going to learn unless you've got anyone to race with on track, and it's really nice to see that they have exactly that.
Yeah, exactly, and as Eric Axel said, I think that was looking left and right. What the VRRC do fantastically well is offer up driver coaching, and they'll try and put people in these situations with an experienced driver. So Dave Marshall will jump out there on the sim with them, start putting drivers under a bit of pressure, you know, practice overtaking, where you should overtake, where you should defend as well. So with any luck, drivers will learn a little bit quicker as well as their experience here on the sim, whether it be at the back of the field or at the front of the field, which is, as I said, why the VRRC is so competitive and why it's one of the standout series to be with. Also, another reason is because you get fantastic drivers driving like this, and Max Bird, Jordan Brennan are pretty much super glued to the back of one another. As Dalton Ayres, put it that way, is up the inside of Chris Shepherd at the Hawthorns. Little bit of a late lunge there, which is something you don't necessarily want to see out your rear view mirror going into Hawthorne, is it? As we go through Westfield, nicely taking and clipping that inside curb, and basically taking exactly the same line here as Daltonez follows the driver in front, just trying to work out where he can get the better run, and he takes a nice bit of curb at the inside of Sheen. What can he do into Sterling? Changes down the gear, a little bit of contact, maybe so, but Chris Shepherd keeps his foot in, and another reason why front-wheel drive cars are so popular in racing is because a little bit of contact doesn't put the drivers off just as much as they did, say, in the Cayman Cup. Carl Felvers getting stuck in as well, around the outside of Clark Curve. He could have 2 positions in 2 corners.
Yeah, well, he went to the right of his teammate Elliot Daltonez, who had repassed Felvers actually over the last lap or so, and then somehow by the time they got to clearways, he was to the left of Chris Shepherd. I'm not quite sure how he did that. He's got his nose ahead into Paddock Hill Bend. That's the outside line, but I don't think that's going to deter Kyle Felvers. Or paint traded on the exit of the corner, and they still run side by side up Hailwood Hill and into Druids Corner. Shepherd is out wide on the brakes, just nuzzles into the side of Felvers, and he's in a HFT sandwich here, isn't he? Because on his inside is Felvers, to his outside look Daltonez. Now Daltonez cuts back to the inside, gives him the hip and shoulder. Out onto the grass goes Chris Shepherd. You can see that coming a mile off. He was never going to survive that HFT encounter without a bit of panel damage. But look at that, shoots straight back up the inside line, gets back ahead of Elliot Daltonez, and now Dave Buki joins in as well. This is terrific racing. All of this happening, by the way, for 10th place.
I think Elliot Daltonez maybe made that a little bit easy because he felt a bit bad about how the way he took that Graham Hill bend and took the position in the first place. But we'll wait and see. As you mentioned, is that Dave? No, it's Will Redford actually, isn't it? Throwing his weight around now, trying to recover again for the second time in 20 minutes, and again trying to get himself into the top 10 would be a good result with all the contact that he has had to suffer throughout this race. So at the moment you're watching Carl Felvers in the newly liveried HFT, Will Redford in the Kinetic, Chris Shepherd, and then Elliot Daltonez, who might be needing some Elliot Dalton spares at this point with his car being bashed around as much as it has done. There is Dave Buki with Mark Redford just behind this little battle. If they play their cards right for the next 4 minutes, they will actually catch up this battle for the top 10.
Not if Dave Buki keeps going rally crossing, which he just did at Sheen Curve. He was a long way off the road. I'd spotted in the background, but knowing Dave, probably didn't lift off the throttle one little bit. Right, disappointingly, only 4¼ minutes left in this enthralling opening round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup here on the VRRC. Max Edmondson continues to lead. I knew he shouldn't have cut away from this battle. Sideways there goes, that was Felvers, wasn't it, who is up and down like the proverbial yo-yo here. Chris Shepherd now goes back to the front of this group in 10th position, with Redford on the outside now. Felvers in the first of those yellow and turquoisey coloured HFT racing cars, trying to get to the inside. That's the outside for Graham Hill Bend, but watch for the switchback. He'll take the wide line in, the tight line out. He doesn't run wide over the curbs, tries to get his nose up the inside of Will Redford's number 42 machine down towards Surtees Corner, but Will on the outside line should carry the momentum off the turn and hang on to 11th place for the time being. I was about to say, before that all kicked off again, that Scott Buckner had got the gap down to Max Edmondson to just about under a second a few laps ago, but now, as you can see, it's going back out again. So I reckon Edmondson Jack might just have been doing what I suggested in his pre-race interview, maybe just managing the tyres through that middle phase of the race, and now he's starting to assert his authority again.
Yeah, however, these guys aren't worrying about tyres at all, are they? In fact, they've probably forgotten all about them as Redford slots his way up the inside of Chris Shepherd. At Westfield, that puts then Chris Shepherd off of the line. That gives Carl Felvers an opportunity to go through. Elliot Daltonez going on the inside of Sheen Curve as well, as they're heading towards Sterling. Felvers all over the back of Redford. Shepherd going defensive. Anywhere you look right now on screen, there's something happening, and Carl Felvers is giving exactly that sort of feeling that actually Mick Sutton and Josh Martin, Martin up ahead for battle for 7th is also getting nice and close. You can't call this one, Andy, can you? Because this is absolutely fantastic work. In fact, sorry, it wasn't Mick Sutton, it was Eric Axelson and Josh Martin. So anywhere you look right now, there is some kind of action probably happening to your favourite drivers. So if this isn't worth a like and a subscribe and a tune in next week, I don't know what is. As Axelson gets his elbows out, something we don't often see him doing, and makes his way up the inside of the driver in front at Druids.
Yeah, but then as we've seen so many times, the inside at Druids becomes the outside at Graham Hill Bend, and so that allows Martin to fight right back, get back through on the inside line. He's now defending the inside down towards Surtees as well to try and prevent another attack from Eric Axelsson, who I sense is getting a bit frustrated here in that green number 75 car. I reckon he's a bit quicker maybe than Martin, but just can't quite find a way through. Right, side by side again here between Chris Shepherd and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who are getting very familiar with each other at that part of the circuit. More wing mirror bashing going on down the hill, and it's starting to get a bit too feisty, this. Chris Shepherd trying to move over on Dalton-Ayres, who's got the inside line for Hawthorne, and for the time being at least goes back through into 11th place. Shepherd, though, ducks back in line, immediately has to watch his mirrors again because Kyle Felvis is there to the inside at Westfield Corner. That's a brave place to try and make a move. It rarely works on the inside, actually, because again, you lose that speed, that momentum down the hill through Dingledell up towards Sheen Curve. Up the inside looks Mark Redford, can't quite make the move stick, and for the time being they remain in single file order through Stirling's Corner down towards Clearways and Clark Curve for, annoyingly, the final time. It's one of those races you really don't want to end. Max Edmondson, I'm sure, is enjoying himself. He's got a 2.3 second cushion over Scott Bugner at the front of the field. Joel Laskin third. All of the action, really, Jack, has been behind them.
It absolutely has, and actually I'm just looking at my track map. I think Edmondson has maybe just lost a little bit of time through the first corner potentially, because it looks like Bugner is almost getting a little bit closer to him than we expected, but we'll ignore them for the time being as Axelsson goes to the outside of Druids. Is he trying to get a late cut back to try and overtake Josh Martin? It's not going to work just yet, but maybe he's trying to set up a move later in this lap as Mark Redford lunges up the inside of Chris Shepherd. And who has gotten away? It's Elliot Dalton-Ayres who's gotten away. So Carl Felvis is the HFT car that's now going side by side with Mark Redford after going side by side multiple times with Will Redford. Chris Shepherd hasn't been able to make any kind of impact going forward. He just seems to be keep getting mugged in these battles and seems to be just getting stuck somewhat, as he was stuck right there. And is that Mark Redford? I think he's just got all the way around the outside. That's sensational stuff.
You're right, he has. He's into 13th again now, ahead of Chris Shepherd, who a lap ago was at the front of this group, and now he's right at the back of it. I noticed as well Andy Carroll has recovered his way back ahead of Dave Buki now. That's for 15th position. Don't forget, race 2 features a full reversed grid, so whoever finishes last in this race starts on pole for race number 2. So Max Edmondson's going to be right at the back of the field, and some of these drivers will get their moment in the spotlight. Mark Hughes there going around the outside of Jones through Hawthorne. That's for 18th place, but actually that will become a top 6 grid position for race 2. Max Edmondson, though, wins the opening round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup here at Brands Hatch. Scott Buckner comes home in 2nd position. Brilliant drive from those two. Joel Lask, likewise, a fighting drive in the early stages to get into 3rd place, and then he managed to pull away from Max Bird 4th, Jordan Brennan 5th, 6th position for Dorman. 7th place then is Mick Sutton, with Martin in 8th, Axelsson 9th, and Will Redford in 10th position. The rest of them quick through. They're 3 wide further back. That was Chris Shepherd, Andy Carroll and Dave Buki. So Shepherd lost even more ground in the end, held on to 14th place, just ahead of Carroll and Buki. But Chris Shepherd not having quite the race that he would have hoped for. Well, some brilliant performances in that one. We will, by the end of the night, have to try and sort out who we think is the driver of the round. We might need some help with that, Jack, so I do encourage anyone in the YouTube comments section to tell us, from that race at least, who you think your pick for driver of the race was, because there were quite a few impressive performances there.
Yeah, you could basically roll a 25-sided dice, couldn't you, and land on anybody, and you'd be in with a good shout. We do have to go to a very quick advert. We'll be hoping to speak to the top 3 drivers from that race straight after this.
Well, as season openers go, that was right up there with the best, I think. The first round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup is in the books, and what a race it was. The stat sheets will tell us that Max Edmondson won it fairly comfortably. That doesn't really do that race justice. That was sensational stuff. Some of the battling through the field was some of the best we've seen here on the VRRC for a long time. As I said though, race winner Max Edmondson didn't actually have to trouble himself with any of that side-by-side battling, because once he got into turn 1 as the race leader at the start, he started immediately to build a bit of a gap, and Max is here now to tell us all about his race. Max got it from pole position, led every lap of the race, 2-point-something second margin at the end. That was as close to a perfect start to the season as you can get.
Yeah, didn't make it the easiest because I ran wide at turn 1 and last corner quite a lot, but I had like a 4-second gap and lost like 3 of them seconds to run it off. But yeah, it wasn't a bad race to be fair.
Yeah, well, we didn't spot any of that, so you could have got away with that, actually. We were too busy following the manic battling going on behind you. But we did notice at the start that you were under quite a bit of pressure, actually. Scott was asking some real questions of you there, so I guess those early laps were a little bit nervy. Yeah,
first 2 laps I was just trying to go for the fastest lap, as I said, after quali, and I pushed it a bit too hard and lost like 1.5 seconds at the last corner, and then the pressure did start to pile on a bit because Scott was like less than 2 seconds behind me.
But you managed to keep him at arm's length. Race 2, though, I feel is not going to be quite as straightforward, is it? A full reversed grid. We've just seen how chaotic it gets in the midfield, so the game plan here, is there a game plan for this reverse grid race?
Sort of. First 3 laps, I think, is my advantage because obviously the tyres, and then after that, I think it's anyone's ball to play with because everyone's tyres will be gone after lap 3 or 4.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how it pans out. But Max, for the time being, huge congratulations on that race victory. Best of luck for race 2.
Thank you.
Well, we mentioned there Scott Bugner, who was chasing him hard in the early stages, and Jack can now catch up with our runner-up finisher.
Yeah, Scott, I don't want to sound condescending or insulting when I say this, but where on earth has this pace come from? You were in the academy a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden, bang, right at the front of the top tier VRRC.
Front-wheel drive, mate. That's what it is. Rear-wheel drive for me, I can't do it. I can't get the hang of it. But as soon as we said Civics, I was like, right, I'm in. We'll do it.
Well, it's clearly worked for you. That qualifying was ballistic. As we just asked, though, to Chris, it's a bit of a different ball game now, isn't it? Reverse grid. What's the plan?
Stay out of trouble for the first couple of laps. We know how chaotic it's going to be, and then just sort of try and pick them off one by one and go from there. Just try and score some solid points, really, and not have a bad race.
Okie dokie. And very last question: has that changed, that last race coming second and being so quick, changed your perspective of the championship? Have your aims changed at all?
We're in it to win it, and I think I've got the pace to keep with Max. I think I was just a bit cautious, but he had it under control. But I think we've got a bit more in the bag.
Cracking. Thanks very much, Scott. We'll let you get going to get ready for race 2.
Thank you.
Scott Bugner even finishing in second place. Third place went the way of Joel Lask. And Joel, I said during that race that I wasn't actually surprised to see you going quickly because you went well in the Touring Car Trophy. So are you another driver who perhaps favours front-wheel drive over rear?
Yeah, definitely. Front-wheel drive is my forte. I just couldn't get the hand of the Porsches. So yeah, it's nice to be back in front-wheel drive cars again. Quite a tough race though, must admit.
Yeah, you had a real battle in the early stages, didn't you, to break into that third place. You must have known it was important to make that progress early while you could.
Yeah, I got stuck behind the cars for a little while, and I knew by that point Scott and Max had made their way forward, so it was just a case of just keeping hold of the tyres. They started to go off towards the end.
Well, you managed that well. We'll let you go now because, as Jack said, race 2 isn't far away, but well done on third place.
Cheers, thank you.
Joel Lesk then in third position for our first race of the season. And now, Jack, we get to do it all over again.
Yeah, I think that what I'm taking away from tonight so far is we need a longer advert between race 1 and race 2 because my voice has not recovered. My excitement levels have not gone down either, which doesn't do my heart any good, put it that way, because these drivers have it on racing at the moment. So it's been brilliant. Fingers crossed we can have the same standard of racing because I didn't think it was too bad in terms of contact.
Yes, we'll see, shall we? 20 minutes of racing then, a full 24-car grid. I should have more faith in these drivers, I suppose, shouldn't I? It is Thorpe and Brunning on the front row of the grid. Lights go out. We're away again for the second time in the Maximum Networks Civic Cup, and it's already a slightly less orderly start. We're going to go 3 wide, are we? 4 for the race lead. They're bouncing off each other like castanets, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 cars off the road. It's already gone completely awry, and actually that could have been a lot worse. No, more cars spinning coming off the corner. Paul Laramie is off the road. It looks as though Mark Hughes has been off too, and quite a few others. Brad Smith, Scott Bugner has been delayed in all of that as well, I think towards the back of the pack. At the front though, it is Reese Bell that leads the way. The safety car, unsurprisingly, is called. A few of them not quite getting the message in time, but they do all slow down in the end. I hate to say I told you so, Jack, but I did have a feeling that might happen. I mean, it's always a challenge to get so many cars into that first corner, and when you've got drivers front row that don't get a great start, that just bottles everyone together, and I think that's kind of what we saw there.
Yeah, I sort of said it through gritted teeth when I spoke about having a bit of a nice clean race, because I didn't think race 1 was the cleanest we've ever seen, but I don't think we saw too many major casualties. We've seen a few more, and it's only been 2 corners. In fact, I was surprised that the safety car wasn't called out before we even got to Paddock Hill Bend, put it that way, because that's where the incident started. Going 4 wide into the first corner of a second race reverse grid is never really that wise, but sometimes you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If the driver in front of you doesn't get a very good start, you either come off the throttle yourself and get mugged by 4 of the cars and get loaded through and put on the outside of the corner, or you actually have to be the one to go up the inside and just try and get through it before the carnage starts. So it is a really difficult position for a few of these drivers. It's always worth noting, Andy, that and commentators always say it, don't they, whenever you're at Brands Hatch, starting on the front row, especially on pole position, actually isn't that massive an advantage, because of the camber of the circuit. You're quite uphill compared to the second and third row of the grid, which can be a lot better.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely, and we saw that there. It was Paul Laramie third, who got a great start, tried to shoot the gap up the middle, and there just wasn't the space. He made contact with Thorpe, that ricocheted him into Brunning, and actually Brunning did well to get away with second place. Oh, now what is that all about? That's Chris Shepherd in the pit wall as we approach the race restart. That was not great. We'll gloss over that for the time being. Then we've got more shuffling further back as well, as others are slipping to the back of the field, but Shepherd has had to make his way to the pit lane. Brad Smith is off as well, just as he was in the earlier race, and we've got, I think, Andy Carroll recovering from a spin there out of Paddock Hill Bend. So a bit more chaos and confusion, and for second place, that's Jones off the road. The safety car back out again. Jones tangling with somebody. That might have been Brunning again, coming out of Druid's corner and rejoining midway through the order. Well, we can officially call you a professional commentator now, Jack, because you have put the curse of the commentator on not just 1 or 2 drivers, but on this entire second race of the night.
Yeah, no, they can blame me. I will happily sit here and be blamed for that one. No, not happily, obviously, because we would rather have had a nice clean start. But double safety car in as many laps, unfortunately. Let's have a look at some of the drivers that maybe didn't get affected so much and have actually moved through the order semi-successfully. Will Redford's moved up 2 positions. Max Edmondson on the timing tower is up to first. That's not the case. In fact, I'm not sure where he is on circuit. There he is. As I said, it's registering him as first. He's absolutely not in first. And as he comes across the timing tower, we'll be able to see actually where he is. But what we can say is the front and back of that Civic has seen better days, as there's somehow a driver off the outside of the circuit at the GP loop, which is Mick Sutton. And I think a few of these drivers probably will need reminding, potentially, of 1, what the safety car means, and 2, about calming things down in the first couple of corners, the first couple of laps. Fingers crossed we have a better restart, Andy, because it wasn't the best, was it, on that one? A few too many drivers just bunching up, trying to get the best run they can, which is understandable, but it did make it very, very messy, as the safety car lights are off.
Right, let's try this again, shall we? Take 3. We are nearly a quarter of the way into the race. Reese Bell leads the way then, with Zach Brunning in second place and Mark Redford third. Will they get to the start-finish line this time before they start having an accident? Across the line we go. No, they won't, because there's again contact in the back of the pack, and that was Dave Buki and Elliot Dalton-Eyre coming together. I think Buki in the wall. What on earth is going on into Paddock Hill Bend? Well, I mean, somehow Buki didn't spin, but he'll have a lot of damage to that car, surely, and he drops out of the top 10. Of course, the other thing this safety car has done is it's prevented them from building up any tyre temperature in the early stages, so grip will be at a premium now as they make their way around the rest of this first lap. Kyle Felvers, though, absolutely flying. He's up into position already, and he is now surely the odds-on favourite for this. Bell still leads from Mark Redford and Zach Brunning the top 3, but it's the man in 4th place, Kyle Felvers, who is moving towards the front.
Yeah, so the safety car hasn't come back out. I gave a bit of a sigh as we saw Dave Buki's car flying into the pit wall because I thought we were instantly going to go to another safety car. We'll focus on the positives, shall we now, Andy? We are under green. Okay, then. Maybe not. As Max Edmondson. Yeah, Edmondson turns himself around. So that is championship leader. Just absolutely has his car basically in half as Zach Brunning goes up the inside of Carl Felvers through Hawthorns. Or maybe that was Carl Felvers trying to go around the outside of Zach Brunning, and Brunning decided to have a little bit of a bite back. But at the moment, he's lost out on that little battle as Josh Martin starts banging doors with John Jones.
So Kyle Felvers then, only 11th in race 1 was Kyle, and we would have expected him, certainly based on his pace in the Cayman Cup, would have expected him to be one of the front runners in the championship here. He was second, remember, in the Cayman Cup that ended a couple of weeks ago, and here he is running in 3rd place with a really good opportunity for a race win, you'd have to say. So with the issues for Max Edmondson down in 21st place now, this could be the HFT driver's opportunity to get some points back. His teammate, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, in 5th position there. He's on the outside line. He's got Kenny Press to his inside, to his outside, excuse me. To the inside goes Dalton-Ayres, and right behind Will Redford there in the Kinetic with Area Motorsport car. And it's all going to change again because 1 or 2 of them run wide. That was Brunning by the looks of it running wide. Dalton-Ayres goes through to 4th position, and Redford goes up the inside of the lot of them. Brilliant driving from him. Oh, off in the background, that's Axelson sideways into the side of another car. Mick Sutton avoids it just. That, again, could have ended an awful lot worse. Axelson loses ground on the exit, but he could very well have taken a few cars out of the race there.
This is survival not of the fittest, it's survival of the luckiest at the moment, isn't it? And a few drivers getting away with some stuff. Josh Martin, who has a lot of love in the YouTube chat, let's focus on that for the time being, has moved his way up from 9th into 6th in the space of about half a lap as they come out of Surtees. Now this is the fight for, I don't know, 10th, I think. Massive train of drivers with Max Bird involved, Joel Lask and Eric Axelson just behind them going side by side into Hawthorns. It's Axelson on the inside. Of course, he went rally crossing through Druids, and he's at the moment staying on the circuit as Max Bird looks very interested in trying to take the inside of that Scott Bugner in 2nd place. In fact, no, it may have been Joel. Yeah, it was Scott Bugner actually. Joel Lask is a little bit further ahead, and it's quite hard these see around openers, isn't it? Season openers to try and get used to everybody's livery, Andy. And considering there's so many very similar looking cars and they're constantly changing positions, it's not helping us at all. But it is fantastic spectacle.
Oh, Reese Bell losing 2nd place there to Kyle Felvers. That looked a bit odd, a really big speed differential between the 2 cars going into clearway. So Felvers now goes 2nd, but yeah, you're right. I just got used to the pink of HFT racing, and now they've changed to the equally fetching yellow, white and blue on their Honda Civics for this championship, one of which is up into 2nd place now. Kyle Felvers, 1.4 seconds off the race lead. He's got nearly 12 minutes to try and chase down Mark Redford, and based on the pace he's shown so far in this race, I think he'll have a decent chance of doing that. Although actually, Felvers only finished 1 place higher than Redford in the previous race, so he might not have quite such a big advantage as we thought. Now, this looks interesting. On the grass goes Jordan Brennan. He's not having a good race here, down to 14th place. Ahead of him there to the left is Mick Sutton. Directly ahead of him is Joel Lask. Side by side in front of them are Max Bird and Kenny Press. And Max Bird looks like he's going right round the outside, but gets tagged sideways. There's another car in the grass. That's Zach Brunning out wide through the dirt. They're 4 and 5 wide down the hill. This ain't going to work.
No, it's definitely not. And you mentioned all the drivers in certain orders. That's all been changed all of a sudden. We're focusing on Jordan Brennan, who's on the inside of a number of drivers, we would probably say, for the time being. I think it's Mick Sutton. In fact, it is. As they go through Hawthorns, one of them is going to end up off the circuit. It's going to be Mick Sutton for now. Keeps his car facing in a straight line, which is what we like to see. And instantly, with dirty tyres, attacks on the inside of Westfield Bend. Eric Axelson, who's that dude just gone off, actually? It's Andy Carroll, isn't it, who I think was victim to the lunge by Mick Sutton. As Zach Brunning is now becoming the victim to Eric Axelson, and Jordan Brennan flying through the field. There's another bit of contact with Zach Brunning and Axelson. The contact keeps on coming as Max Bird and Mick Sutton start to file their way through.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall on the conversations Rich Hayden has after this race
I
with
know.
some of these drivers. There are going to be a few words, I think. It's entertaining to watch, but it's, yes, we'd like a little bit less contact if possible. Zach Brunning, I feel, for a bit here, down to 15th place now, having run well in the early part of the race. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, I've just spotted, has taken 4th away from Reese Bell, who I'm hearing has also been brought into the HFT Racing team as a last-minute entrant. Side by side for Eric Axel. Another car was in the gravel, and another car goes off. That's Zach Brunning, who now really does see his race unravel, on board with Zach, who finds himself falling down the order, and more carnage. Buki's off the road. There's a third car. That was, Kenny Press, who is sat sideways at the side of the track. Dave Buki's going the wrong way into the barriers. Oh dear.
Oh dear, yeah, I think that could be the title to this race. I think it's not going. It's not the sort of thing we like to see at VRRC, is it? Let's focus. We'll try and focus a little bit further forward, because Will Redford and Carl Felvers are getting very interested in each other right now. It's lovely to see these battle for the top two, as that's Elliot Dalton-Ayres flying off this circuit. I'm not sure if that was unopposed or whether that was due to a bit of racing side by side with the likes of Josh Martin and Reese Bell. But if we focus within the front six, shall we, for the time being, we'll try and sort out the rest of the top 10 a little later on. 9 minutes to go. I've no idea how we haven't had more of this race gone by. It's quite unbelievable. We've got just under halfway through. Just over halfway through, frankly. Mark Redford's done a fantastic job as well, though, Andy. Let's give him a lot of credit, because once he's got into the race lead, he built a bit of a gap up. Okay, it's coming down now, but it's probably inevitable with Will Redford and Carl Felvers coming after him. But he's done a fantastic job.
Now, Will Redford is in a slightly awkward position here, because you may have noticed it's a Redford 1-2. I've just been reliably informed that Mark is Will's father, so it's father ahead of son. I'm sure that they'd quite like to keep this order until the end and bring home a nice father-son 1-2. But Kyle Felvers is the fly in the ointment, isn't he? Because he's on the attack to try and get a race win, and he doesn't really care where the Redfords finish in this race as long as they finish behind him. So Will might have no choice but to attack his dad here and try and take the win away as they go past Dave Buki's stricken car by the looks of it. Dave Buki watching on from the sidelines to see how his teammate gets on here in second place. But yeah, Will Redford, if he comes under any sort of pressure here from Carl Felvers, might have no choice but to go on the attack for the race lead. He's clearly the quicker of the two. I'm already impressed, actually, with Redford and the way that he's been able to overtake Kyle Felvers, who's been one of the quicker drivers on the VRRC over the last few months. And now he's challenging his father for the lead of the race.
I'd love to know if they're in the same house as well, because I know Will Redford is a young driver. He's, as he gets very sideways. And actually, on Monday, I had a chat with him. He had to put not a new engine, he had to put a used engine into his car, which means he didn't have any practice at Cadwell Park and still came away with 2 solid top 5 results, I think. He unfortunately had to retire race 3, but he was on my car to be driver of the day in real life. Unfortunately, retirement in race 3 meant that he didn't get it, but this is going to be very interesting. I'd love to sit down with them at dinner after he lunged up the inside of his dad there, who's trying to go for a lovely cutback here. The Redfords not being afraid to race each other nose to tail, side to side for the race win. Carl Felvers must be looking at that and thinking, yes, please, Mark, just hold him up just a bit, because I don't think Felvers has the ultimate pace on Will Redford here. He might have it on Mark, but I don't think the race lead is really something that Felvers can be thinking too much about right now.
No, certainly not now that Will has established himself as the race leader. The only way that Felvers is going to properly become involved in this battle is if those two start fighting each other a little bit harder. That's not happening for the time being, though. So Will Redford continues to lead. Mark Redford second. Felvers is on the grass in third position. They're 3 seconds clear look of the Motus One liveried car in fourth position. That is a decent gap that they've got, actually, over Josh Martin in fourth. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is fifth. This is the fight for sixth. Scott Bugner up the inside of Reese Bell. Now, you mentioned their driver of the day. Scott Bugner has to be one of the candidates, I think, because through all of the madness, mayhem and confusion, the man who finished second in race 1 has clawed his way tenaciously into 7th place and on to back of 5th place battle. This is a good point scoring day for Scott Bugner, and it looks like he might not be done gaining progress.
Yep, he almost looked like he was trying to go for the inside of Reese Bell, who had shown his intentions early and knew that he wasn't going to be shifted from the inside of that circuit. But Scott, I have to say, probably has one of the cleanest cars out there on the grid as well for race number 2, which is always a sign that you've driven nicely, as he flies up the inside. of Sheen Curve. Going into Sterling, he should have be the later breaker. There was always going to be a little bit of contact there. Both hold it nicely, though. As Reese Bell, getting a little bit ambitious there on the fight back, and now falls behind the likes of Joel Lask, who's also had an exceptional day, it's worth noting as well, and potentially Jordan Brennan. So, in fact, here goes Jordan Brennan through the final corner, and Reese Bell potentially may see the top 10 even fly away from him as they go over the rest of these last 5 minutes. Mark Redford has been reeled in by Kyle Felvis at this point, and is in fact having to go defensive into Druids.
Yes, he is. Bit of a mistake at Paddock Hill Bend there. Ran wide, lost momentum up the hill. That gives Felvis the opportunity to force him to defend. But again, the wide line into Druids gives him the tight exit, but the outside again, Graham Hillbend. Now, can Mark get across to defend into Surtees? He's going to try, but the gap is filled. And this time, I think Felvis might just go through. He's late on the brakes. He gets to the apex first. He'll get to the throttle as soon as he can, but Mark Redford brilliantly hangs on the outside. And fair play to Kyle Felvis as well for leaving him room and slotting back in third position. So Mark Redford hangs on to second. They're really allowing Will Redford to make a break for it now as the race leader. Look, 2.3 seconds is his margin with 4.25 minutes still to go. Mark Redford second, Kyle Felvis in third, and Josh Martin in fourth position, trying his best to chase them down. This is a brilliant battle, and I have to say, 10 out of 10 there for respect shown by both these drivers.
Yeah, this is what we like to see at VRRC, isn't it? We like to see them close battles, and race 1 was a typical example of everything we like to see at VRRC. Race 2, it's had its moments where it's maybe not been a brilliant show, but this second half of the race has been much better. Really nice, close, respectful racing, especially from the top 5. Reese Bell, okay, he missed his braking zone, but there was nothing malicious in the contact between himself and Scott Bugner, as Andy Carroll is facing the wrong way round, unfortunately. But he gets back on the circuit, rejoins nice and safely. Is that Brennan trying to go all the way around the outside? Sorry, not Brennan, Max Bird. In fact, it is. So Brennan, I think, has got past him and put Bell all of a sudden in the clutches of Max Bird.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how Bird ended up on that line, but it was not the quick line through clearways, that's for sure. Eric Axelson back into 11th place now, ahead of John Jones. Nice move into Paddock Hill Bend, and although he runs a bit wide on the exit, I don't think Jones will get back to the inside at Druids. No, not quite. And so Axelson does now make 11th place his own as they drop out of Druids and down towards Graham Hill Bend. Just under 3 minutes to go in what has been a dramatic second round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup. That has to be said. Will Redford leading the way. The big question, though, is will we get his father on the second step of the podium, or the third, or neither perhaps, because they're continuing to be caught here slightly by Josh Martin. And of course, the more that Mark Redford defends his second place, the closer Martin will become. So far, though, Mark's had an answer really for everything that Kyle Felvis has thrown at him. Felvis would like this second place, and he might just get it. He's up the inside. There's contact. No! Mark Redford off into the barriers. What a shame that ended in contact. There was just the tiniest touch as they came over the crest of the hill at Westfield, and Felvis either has damage or is backing off to give the place back. But that's such a difficult place to go side by side, and the slightest bit of contact there over the crest as the car goes light, Jack, is always going to send the car sideways.
Yeah, I think if I know Carl Felvis, he's a very, very fair racing driver. He's actually trying to let Mark Redford back through, and then he'll pick up the pace again. But that won't really help Mark Redford, who wanted to be on the podium with his son, I'm sure. And it is difficult. They were trying to race as fairly as they can, but that GP section of Brands Hatch is so unforgiving. We mentioned it during qualifying. We've seen plenty of examples of it here today so far, and unfortunately, there's a little bit more contact. That's between Redford this time and Joel Lask, as Felvis tries to go back up the inside of both of them into Druids. Hopefully they keep it nice and clean. In fact, Lask comes off the brake, off the throttle a little bit earlier, hits the brake a little bit harder as well. They settle themselves in for a nice sort of longer battle. Having said that, they try and go 3 into 1 at Graham Hill Bend, and normally you can't even go 2 into 1 at Graham Hill Bend.
Yeah, that didn't work, and we could have told them that wasn't going to work as they were halfway down the hill. Somehow Mark Redford is back into 5th place here. Joel Lask got Jordan Brennan up the inside. Now, what did I say about Brennan in race 1? You can almost always guarantee that he will pick his way through it. These are the messy races that Jordan Brennan sometimes excels in, actually, with all of that ballast on the car. Not necessarily the quickest driver out there or the quickest car out there. he is tenacious. He's got great racecraft. He turns into Joel Lask slightly just to try and prove me wrong going into Hawthorns, but they survive it. Jordan Brennan is a survivor, and this has been race primarily really about survival. He's 7th place. It's not headline news really seeing Jordan Brennan running in 7th position, but he's still going, and we haven't really seen him, touch wood, get involved in too many fisticuffs out there. So a typical Brennan drive this.
No, exactly, and there's one great touring car champion, obviously, of Colin Turkington, who actually won a championship by averaging 6th position all season long and didn't really get that many podiums, didn't really get that many race wins, but the fact is he finished in the top 6 pretty much 95% of the time, I believe, so he walked away with the championship. No one cares how many race wins you got if you've got that trophy at the end of it, and that's exactly what Brennan is trying to personify right now. Right, we came across the line there with Will Redford about 6 seconds ago, which means this will be our last lap of the race as Axelson gets past Reece Bell. We've had a question in the YouTube chat about how to join in with VRRC. Clearly liking what you're seeing tonight. There's a Discord link down in the description. All you have to do is click that. You can even join in on our fun races if you don't want to get involved directly in these championships straight away, as Joel Lask and Jordan Brennan still going at it with each other, as Carl Felder takes advantage of both of them going off the circuit. I'll get back to the rest of my description of how to join VRRC in a second, because going through Surtees now, Brennan on the inside of Joel Lask, who remember got 3rd place in race number 1 here today, or earlier this evening, is really getting his elbows out with a former champion, which you mentioned Joel Lask. You're not surprised, Andy, to see him right at the front of the order. I'm surprised slightly to see how well he's racing with these former champions. We've always known he's got good pace in the front-wheel drive car, but his racecraft has sometimes let him down, but he's showing he's got it this time.
He would like to use that racecraft to gain one more valuable position, a couple more valuable championship points against a driver we know will be fighting for the championship come the end of the season, because he always is. Jordan Brennan to the inside into Sheen Curve, goes Lask, he's late on the brakes, he can't quite get there, and Max Bird is catching the pair of them. 2 more corners to go, and this battle is going to go right down to the wire. At the head of the field though, what a performance from Will Redford, who wins round number 2 of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup here at Brands Hatch. 2nd place goes the way of Josh Martin. A really good drive that from him. Bit lucky at the end to get into 2nd, but hey, he had to be there to pick up the pieces, and he was. Elliot Dalton Ayres is 3rd. Scott Bugner in 4th. Mark Redford, 5th position, and that was actually a really good drive given how he ended up in the barriers and has only half a Civic left really at the end of the race. 6th place Carl Felder, 7th Jordan Brennan, 8th Joel Lask, 9th Max Bird, and 10th place for Eric Axelson. Right. I need to lie down after that. That was a very dramatic night of racing. We've seen some really good racing there. Certainly a lot to talk about after the 2 races tonight. At some point, Jack, we've got to try and figure out a driver of the race, a driver of the day as well, although that may take a little bit of working out. Whilst we're thinking of that, why don't we hear from our podium finishers? Because it is a brilliant race win for Will Redford, and Will Redford joins us now up in the commentary box. And Will, it was so nearly a Redford 1-2. Sadly, your father Mark ended up in the barriers later in the day, but from you, that was a really, really good drive. You finished 9th in race 1, which meant you started quite close to the back in race 2, and here you are on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame we couldn't bring home the 1-2, but still a good result for my dad. He finished 5th, so he's got to be happy with that. Anyway, yeah, it was a difficult first race. I got a bit bullied and knocked down the order, and then I got turned around. So that sort of ended any chance of finishing on the podium. But reverse grid, you know, it's another race, new chance, and we just went for it.
Yeah, I mean, that first race, let's talk about that briefly then, because we didn't get the chance to chat to you after race 1. I thought we would, because it looked like you were on course for a podium, so the pace was there initially, wasn't it? And I think when you had that little slide, a bit of contact, it shows how competitive the grid is. A tiny little moment like that, and you lose so much momentum and so many places.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's so close, so I mean, as soon as one person goes by, everyone else starts going by, and it sort of becomes, you know, you sit and duck, and you get taken on the outside and on the inside. And then I started making my way back through, and I went around the outside of, I can't remember who it was, but it was a black car. I went around the outside of him at Druids, and then we had a bit of a coming together into Graham Hill, where he sort of hit my rear end and it turned me round. But I managed to gain a few places back, and that's what got me to the 9th place finish in the end.
Obviously, a race win in race 2 and a decent points haul, actually, all things considered. A few of those that did well in race 1 didn't do so well in race 2. So, championship-wise, I know we're only one night in. It's a 6-week championship, but you've got to be thinking that that you're going to be in the mix by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to be. I'm hoping to be in real life as well, but we had an unfortunate weekend at Cadwell in the first round. But yeah, it's just all about consistency, and especially with these big reverse grid races, you just got to keep going and trying to make up as many positions as you can and get a decent finish in both races. But yeah, I'm hoping to be in the fight for the championship.
I think based on the pace we saw in that second race, you probably will be, and also based on the brilliant racecraft we saw from you. Really unlucky in race 1. Brilliant racing to carve your way through the madness that was the reverse grid race. And so, for your troubles, we're not just going to give you the 25 championship points that go with a race win, but you are also the recipient of our first Driver of the Round award. So, a Powermax Valeting kit is on its way to you for a tenacious recovery drive after the disappointments of race 1. So, well done.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, I was on for it in the first round in real life as well, and then I didn't finish the third race. But hey, it's nice to get it in the E-Series. Thank you.
There we go. Makes up a little bit for Cadwell Park. Yeah, well done, Will. Looking forward to catching up with you at the next Civic Cup round, and indeed next week here on the Sim as well. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Will Redford then gets the race 1 win and is our first driver of the round recipient for the season. Right then, Jack, I believe, has got our second place finisher from our second race of the season.
Yeah, Josh Martin, congratulations on getting up on the podium. I think it's safe to say you were in the thick of the action for the majority of that race, but you somehow managed to get through in the end and secure that podium right at the end.
Yeah, I come from, I think it was P17 I started, and just tried to keep my nose clean, stay out of trouble, make some good moves, and then got a bit lucky at the end with second and third bumping into each other, and yeah, just held on really. Spent I know the last 10 minutes of that race praying my internet was gonna survive because it keeps dropping out, but my internet held in. So yeah, we made it to the end, got a podium.
I was going to say, realistically, you survived basically the first 10 minutes. Is that what it felt like? Were you even thinking about finishing position in that first half of that race?
The first 3 laps was just a survival really, just trying to find a bit of clear track, but once I kind of got through the bulk of the traffic, and I think I was up to P6, P7, and I could kind of see that front group, and I was catching a little bit. I thought, hey, we might be on for a podium, and I was looking solid for P4. I didn't quite have enough speed to really catch second and third, but that's racing. They ended up bumping into each other, and we ended up getting the second.
I was going to say second, but third in the championship, in fact, actually. You're joint on points with Max Edmondson, race 1 winner. Have you entered into this championship thinking, you know what, I can take that top spot at the end of the season? Or is this a bedding in period for you with VRRC?
Yeah, I did the, obviously the virtual mini challenge series. And I kind of then had a bit of a break from the sim, trying to focus on getting the real life car built, and then that all kind of ran out of time. So I thought, well, I don't want to get too rusty, so I thought I'll jump back on the sim with VRRC and yeah, give it a go. So I guess keep improving for the next few rounds, get kind of wear the rust off of how to drive on the sim, and hopefully become a bit quicker as the rounds go on.
Fair enough. One very quick point before we let you go. There is a YouTube username of X2JZ Dave.
Yeah, that'll be my good friend Dave. He comes along to all the real life races on the spanners.
Right.
Yeah, big up Dave.
Big up Dave, but you need to get a film of him next time you see him, because he said if Josh gets a podium, I'll do a shoey. He's put that in the YouTube chat. He can't get rid of it. I've screenshotted it as well. So don't let him get away with that.
My internet finally went then.
Oh, well, okay. Basically, your mate's saying he'll do a shoey if you get into a podium position, so don't let him get away with it.
Oh, he's got to do it now.
give him a film and send it over to VRRC. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, I will do.
Fantastic. Well done, Josh, on a brilliant second place.
Fantastic stuff, Josh Martin then. Second position, and celebrations all round this evening with that P2 that he bagged. Right, third place was Elliot Dalton Ayres. Elliot joins us now. to be honest, Elliot, I think you occupied almost every position in that race at one point or another. That was a real dogfight out there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Started P14 and then managed to get through a few corners at the start, and then saw a lot of people going off, and then safety car was called, and just kind of went from there.
You see, you make that sound a lot calmer than it was when we were watching from the outside. I mean, how much of that survival in the early stages? Because you're right, there were cars flying off left, right, and centre. You were pulling off some good overtakes. People were trying to get back past you. How much of that survival is down to you managing it and having good spatial awareness and sort of picking your moments? And how much of it is down to just sheer luck? Because I'd imagine it's a bit of both.
I'm assuming it was quite a bit of luck, because there was quite a bit of crashes there that I managed to avoid, but pulled some good moves and managed to get to P5, and then saw up ahead, I think it was Kyle and someone else. I saw go off, and then I thought, no, hang on, could be on for a podium here.
That podium will come in very handy because it gives you some nice championship points, of course. And after a first race where you managed to finish, where were you in race 1, 10th position, they were much needed points, were they, in that second race?
Yeah, they were. They definitely were.
Well, will you be able now to put together a championship challenge? That's the question. I mean, it seems like there are lots of drivers out there that could be contending for the championship. Do you think you're one of them?
I think I got lucky with that one, but never count me out. I mean, there's quite a few quick drivers there. Don't know if I'll keep up with them, but I'll definitely try.
Excellent stuff. Well, Elliot, huge congratulations on that third place finish. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Elliot Altenairs then finishing in third place. I have to say, if the information I'm being given is correct here, Jack, then he is the most mature-sounding 13-year-old I think I've ever.
I'm not buying that. I'm not having the. He sounds about 22 to me. He sounds like he's halfway through uni. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Carl Felber's a very mature 14-year-old. He might be 15 now, to be fair. So it's nice to see that these drivers are jumping in, mixing it with some really quick adults as well in the sim. And as I said, on maturity level, it's important for them to sort of not get too hot-headed, because that is when we start seeing crashes. And Elliot is showing exactly why he's at the front of the order.
And I'm just going to get on my soapbox for a second here, but that's something that I think sim racing really does well, and that a lot of people in real-world motorsport don't appreciate sim racing for enough. But where else in the world can a 13-year-old get into a very realistic racing situation in a very realistic sim version, admittedly, but a very realistic one of a real car, and go out there on the great racetracks in the UK and beyond and learn their racecraft, learn about setting up cars, learn about how to be a racing driver, not just on the track, but then jumping into a commentary box straight after the race and asking our silly questions. At 13 years old, that's valuable experience, and it's a resource that simply wasn't there 10 or 15 years ago, and I think that's why we're seeing really good youngsters getting into real-world motorsport as well. And I think it's something that actually we need to give sim racing a big pat on the back and a thanks for. Anyway, back off the soapbox now. Let's talk instead about championship standings. And Jack, as we expected, Scott Bugner coming out of that pretty well.
Yeah, no, he's had a very solid haul of points, hasn't he, here today? Will Redford hasn't done too badly either, considering his race 1 went, well, I wouldn't say disastrously, because he's obviously done pretty well, but it was 2 recovery drives in the space of 10 minutes, essentially. So there's a reason why he got driver of the day. Obviously, Scott did a brilliant job as well, but he comes away with the championship lead. Max Edmondson and Josh Martin both tied on points for 3rd position. Then you got Joel Lask, as you said, very impressive in the front-wheel drive. Elliot Dalton Ayres, yeah, all right, didn't have a brilliant race 1, but that race 2 has certainly helped him big style. Max Bird is in there, still in the mix with Jordan Brennan and Mark Redford. Basically, it is only the first round, but it's nice to see that the top 8, anyway, are separated by only 10 points. And sometimes, even at the end of round 1, you can sort of see who maybe the top 5 are by the end of the championship. It's nice to see that we've got a wider spectrum here today. And I'm sure drivers, the likes of Dave Buki, who's down in 17th position, and Eric Axelson, who's down in 11th, Carl Felbers, who's down in 10th at the moment, you can see them pressing on in the future as well and coming back really strong. Brad Smith, he's 20th at the moment, and Chris Shepherd is 24th. He's dead last. You will see those drivers push towards the top 10. There'll be lots of change for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, but we've made the point before, only 6-week championships, 12 races, so it is hard to dig yourself out of this hole sometimes early in the season. It'll be fascinating to see who can do it and to what extent, but you will want to tune in next week, that's for sure, for the next round of racing in the Civic Cup, because it's going to be, again, a night full of close racing. I mean, if you thought the racing was good here, what's it going to be like at Thruxton, officially at least, the fastest racetrack in the UK? Slipstreaming aplenty and bags of space to go 3 and 4 wide out around the back of the circuit, as misguided as that may be to attempt to do. I'm sure we're going to see some people trying to do that. So the 11th of May, same time, same place, next Wednesday night is when we'll be heading to Thruxton for rounds 3 and 4 for the championship. I'm going to just sleep, I think, for the rest of the week, Jack, so that I'm mentally and physically prepared for what's going to go down at Thruxton. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to see them going 4-5 wide into that final chicane after a line of slipstreaming for 3 laps in a row. That will be very fun. Alton Park is a little bit more like Brands Hatch, a little bit narrower and fewer overtaking opportunities. And then Silverstone, obviously, everybody knows about Silverstone, and Donington Park. And Croft is, I wouldn't say unusual, but one that you don't see as much on the sim either. So that
You're a fan of Croft, aren't you, Jack?
I'm not a fan of Croft. No, absolutely not. No, it's one that doesn't get used, though, is my point. So drivers might not be as used to it as some of the other tracks on the calendar, which, again, will put a bit of spice in the mix. Right, very quickly, everything else that's VRRC. This is going to be very quickly now, because everybody should pretty much know the spiel. If you want to get involved in what you've seen tonight on Assetto Corsa, or if you want to run on time attacks, or even the fun races where you don't have to be a member of VRRC at all, you can just jump on Saturday night. I can't remember the car that we're currently in. It might be a Ginetta G55, actually. That's on Saturday. It runs in the same format as this. It's just free for anybody, though. So if you fancy having a go at what you've seen tonight in the Civic Cup, but you don't really want to commit too much just yet, and have a go in the fun races and see what the deal is with VRRC. We've also got dirt rally competitions and weekly stages and rallycross. Forza Horizon, that's more for sort of just your chatting, casual sim racer who might just want to sort of jump on and just chill out for an evening, especially after something so intense like the Civic Cup. And obviously on the Assetto Corsa competition, there's weekly endurances. And I believe we've got iRacing setting up as well soon. So there's loads of stuff that you can do here on VRRC. Please do click the link in the description to the Discord, and you'll be able to have a look through everything we've got to offer.
Yes, you will. Yes. So that is all of the action on the VRRC coming up in the near future. And I know I saw a lot of people actually in the YouTube chat asking about how to get involved, how they can enter this series, how they can enter other series. So whatever the platform is that you use, whatever sim or game you enjoy playing, then there is something for you here on the VRRC. Right then, we're going to need a full week, I think, to recover from all of the action here from the opening rounds of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup. We hope you've enjoyed the show. I know that I have. Myself and Jack Oliphant will be back again in a week's time at Ruxton for rounds 3 and 4 of the championship. For now, though, from everyone here at the VRRC, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again next week.